In the shadowy corners of our sprawling estate, the twins cried for help while the world outside celebrated their father's fortune. $17 million couldn't buy the love or attention they so desperately needed. When the clock struck midnight on their 10th birthday, their cries were silenced by the deafening sounds of indifference. It was only the maid, with her tender heart and unyielding spirit, who dared to break the cycle of neglect, unwittingly changing the twins' fate forever. My name is Brielle. I am the survivor of a family that turned its back on us, but we will rise. I remember the first time Clara sat down with us in the attic, the dust floating like tiny stars in the beams of light that sneaked through the small window. We were too old to be playing, but we had retreated to that forgotten space where the weight of our parents' expectations felt lighter, hidden beneath layers of old blankets and abandoned toys.
Clara smiled gently as she pulled a faded photo album from a cardboard box. "Let's remember what joy looks like," she said softly, flipping through the pages filled with our family's happier moments. Each picture told stories of laughter and warmth, something that felt foreign to us now, like looking at a world we could barely touch. As she pointed out our father with his boyish grin at our first birthday, I could see the flicker of nostalgia in her eyes. "He was always so proud of you two," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But even in those tender moments, I felt the weight of truth creeping in. Daniel had been a different man back then, before ambition had dulled his heart. Thomas and I exchanged glances, and I could see the reflection of our shared sadness in his eyes. We yearned for even a fraction of that pride now, the warmth that had vanished from our lives like the sunshine behind a storm cloud. Clara's presence was a balm, but the reminder of our father's absence felt like an open wound. Days turned into weeks, and our attic meetings became a sanctuary. Clara would bring stories from her own life, tales of her childhood filled with laughter and love, leaving us captivated. Thomas listened intently, hanging on every word, while I often found myself lost in thought, longing for our lives to mirror those idyllic narratives. Clara taught us how to cook, sharing simple recipes and reminding us of the importance of family gatherings, even though we had no one to gather with. The kitchen, filled with the scent of fresh bread and cookies, became a place of solace, a stark contrast to the emptiness that permeated our home. Each time we gathered around the table, Clara would encourage us to share our dreams, coaxing out our hopes like a gardener tending to flowers. "I want to travel," Thomas once admitted, his voice barely a whisper, but filled with a fierce longing. "To see the world beyond these walls." I could see the fire in his eyes, the same yearning that pulsed through me. I wanted to escape, to experience life beyond the gilded cage our father had built around us. I wanted to feel the wind on my face, to run free without the weight of expectation and disappointment. Clara nodded, her expression softening. "And you will," she promised, "if you believe in yourselves." Her unwavering faith in us was a light in our darkest moments. Yet, despite our growing bond with Clara, the weight of our father's indifference loomed ever present. He continued to drown in his work, missing our school plays and milestones, reinforcing the feeling of being unworthy in his eyes. I remember one evening when Thomas and I sat on the grand staircase, waiting for him to arrive home. We were dressed in our best clothes, the same ones our mother had insisted on, hoping he would notice us. The clock ticked slowly, each second stretching into an eternity. When he finally walked through the door, his face was buried in his phone, his mind elsewhere. I felt a wave of disappointment wash over me, a familiar ache. I had wanted him to see us, to acknowledge our existence, but he walked past as if we were mere furniture in the house. Margaret often tried to fill the void, her gentle touch comforting us as she tucked us into bed, but there was an emptiness in her eyes too, a silent acknowledgement that we were all floating on separate islands, far from each other. She was overwhelmed, trying to juggle her responsibilities while battling her own feelings of inadequacy. The weight of the mansion pressed down on her shoulders like a heavy cloak, and I could see the exhaustion etched on her face. I wished I could lift that burden for her, to make her feel seen and valued.
On one particularly difficult evening, I noticed her sitting alone in the parlor, staring blankly at the wall, as if the very fabric of her being was unraveling. Thomas and I exchanged glances, sensing the heaviness in the air, and we quietly approached her, offering the only thing we could, our presence. "Mom, can we help you?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. She looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You already do, my loves," she replied, forcing a smile. But I could sense the lie hidden behind her words. We were all pretending, wearing masks to hide our sadness and unfulfilled dreams. I wanted to reach through that mask, to connect with her, to make her understand that she was not alone in her struggles. But it was as if we were caught in a vicious cycle, each of us desperately wanting to break free, yet unsure how to do it. Clara became a bridge between our worlds, reminding us of the strength we held within ourselves. "You are not your father's shadows," she would say, her voice steady and sure. "You are vibrant, filled with dreams and potential. Never let anyone dim your light." Her words echoed in my heart, urging me to take action. It was a slow realization, but I began to see how we could shape our own destinies. Together with Thomas, we started to brainstorm ways to carve out our place in this world, to be seen not just by our father, but by ourselves. One sunny afternoon, as we sat on the grass outside, we crafted a plan, fueled by hope. "We should organize a charity event," I suggested, my excitement bubbling over. "Something that brings everyone together, our friends, the community. We could raise money for children who don't have what we do." Thomas's eyes lit up at the idea. "We could invite Clara to help us," he added, his enthusiasm infectious. I felt the warmth of possibility enveloping us, and for the first time in years, I dared to believe that we could change our narrative. With Clara's support, we began to reach out to people in our community, sharing our vision and garnering interest in our event. As the plans unfolded, I could feel a shift within myself. I was no longer waiting for my father to notice me. I was taking charge, asserting my existence in a way I never thought possible. Thomas stood beside me every step of the way, his steadfast presence reminding me that I was not alone in this fight. We were a team, two halves of a whole, determined to rise above the indifference that had shadowed our lives for far too long. As days turned into weeks, our newfound determination brought a subtle shift in the atmosphere of our home. I could feel the air thick with unspoken words, and I saw the way Thomas and I began to stand taller, as if we were shedding the weight of invisibility that had shackled us for so long. Our conversations with Clara became a refuge, a sanctuary where we could express our fears and dreams without judgment. In her presence, I felt seen, really seen, in a way I had craved for so long. One afternoon, as we sat on the worn-out couch in the sunlit sitting room, I confided in her about my longing to paint. I shared how colors spoke to me more than words ever could, how each stroke of the brush felt like a whisper of my soul demanding to be heard. Clara listened intently, her eyes sparkling with encouragement as she urged me to pick up the paintbrush again. "Art is your voice, Brielle," she said softly. "You must let it out, let it breathe, even if nobody else understands it yet." Her words ignited a fire in me, and I found myself dreaming of canvases filled with swirling colors and vibrant depictions of emotions that had been bottled up inside. The very next day, I rummaged through the attic, discovering my old easel and a set of forgotten paints. When I set them up in the garden, the sunlight bathed me in warmth, and I felt a pulse of excitement coursing through me. As I painted, I lost track of time, my heart dancing with joy. Thomas joined me, sitting nearby, sketching in his notebook. I glanced over, intrigued by the way he brought to life the images that flickered through his mind, his pencil gliding with confidence. However, our small oasis of creativity could not completely shield us from the larger storms brewing inside our household. Margaret was struggling under the weight of her unfulfilled dreams, her laughter growing fainter with each passing day. I often caught her gazing out the window, her eyes clouded with worry as she watched Daniel retreat further into his world of work. It pained me to see her like this, a once vibrant woman slowly dimming under the pressures of familial expectations and unrelenting solitude. One evening, I approached her while she was preparing dinner, hesitant yet determined to bridge the growing chasm between us. "Mom, are you okay?" I asked gently, my voice barely above a whisper. She paused, her hands trembling slightly as she turned to face me. "Of course, darling, just a bit tired," she replied, but I could sense the fragility in her smile. It was as if my question had unearthed a hidden truth, and before I could blink, tears filled her eyes. Without a word, I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tightly, as if my embrace could somehow mend the cracks that had formed over the years. I felt Thomas slip in beside us, adding his warmth to the hug, and for a fleeting moment, we were a united front against the disconnection that had become our family's norm. During those moments, I realized that we needed to fortify our bond to ensure that our love for one another would not wither away under the pressures of neglect. I suggested to Thomas that we create a family night, an idea that sparked a flicker of excitement in his eyes. "Maybe we could cook dinner together, play games, or even watch a movie," I proposed enthusiastically. He nodded, the corners of his mouth lifting in agreement. I could sense that he had been yearning for something to bring us together, and I knew in my heart that this could be the beginning of a transformation. With Clara's help, we planned our first family night. I baked cookies while Thomas set the table, and Clara prepared a simple yet delicious pasta dish. As we gathered around the dining room table, I felt a mixture of hope and apprehension. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, and I held my breath as I watched Margaret and Daniel exchange glances. There was a tension, a hesitance that lingered in the air, but I clung to the belief that this was a vital step towards healing. "Let's share something we appreciate about each other," I suggested, trying to keep the mood light. Margaret smiled gratefully at the idea, while Daniel's brows furrowed in contemplation. "I appreciate your hard work, Dad," Thomas said, his voice steady. "But I also wish we could spend more time together." I held my breath, hoping that his words would resonate with our father. To my surprise, Daniel nodded, a flicker of realization crossing his face. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. As the evening unfolded, stories flowed more easily than they had in years. Laughter filled the air, weaving a thread of connection that had long been neglected. I watched as the walls between my parents slowly began to crumble, and my heart swelled with a mixture of pride and joy. For the first time in a long while, our home felt alive, pulsing with the warmth of shared experiences. Yet, in the back of my mind, I still wondered about the secrets surrounding Daniel's past. Clara had mentioned whispers of a different man before success consumed him. What could have happened to turn a man who once dreamt of being a father into a shadow of his former self? I promised myself that I would unravel that mystery, but for now, I chose to savor this moment. The bonds we were forging felt fragile, yet I clung to the hope that they were also unbreakable. As the night came to an end and we all retreated to our corners of the house, I lay in bed reflecting on the changes we were beginning to embrace. I realized that while the road to healing would be long and winding, I was no longer willing to walk it alone. I had my brother, my mother, and even Clara, who had inadvertently become a guiding light in our darkest hours. Perhaps together we could illuminate the path ahead, step by step, as we began to rediscover what it meant to truly be a family. In the silence of my room, as sleep began to take hold, I couldn't shake the feeling that something beautiful was on the horizon, a glimmer of hope that perhaps we could rewrite our story, one filled with love, understanding, and the courage to face the truths that lay hidden in the shadows. If you enjoyed this journey of resilience and family love, consider subscribing to follow along as Brielle, Thomas, and their loved ones navigate the complexities of their lives. Let's uncover their secrets together, one chapter at a time. As I sat with Thomas in the dimly lit corner of our favorite room, the old study filled with dusty books and the aroma of forgotten memories, I felt the weight of our isolation pressing down like the heavy drapes that hung in front of the windows. We had grown accustomed to the silence that enveloped our lives, a silence punctuated only by the distant sound of our father's phone calls and our mother's quiet sighs. But in that moment, as I looked at Thomas, I saw a flicker of determination in his eyes, something that sparked hope within me. "What if we try to make our voices heard?" I proposed, feeling the rush of excitement that came with the possibility of change. Thomas nodded, his brow furrowing thoughtfully, as if the idea had taken root and begun to grow. Clara had been a constant presence in our lives, her laughter and warmth cutting through the fog of our loneliness. We often caught glimpses of her hard work, how she managed to juggle her responsibilities while still offering us kindness in the small moments. One evening, while we helped her with dinner preparations, I noticed the way she hummed softly to herself, a melody that seemed to echo our unspoken dreams. "Clara, do you ever feel like you're living in someone else's story?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She paused, looked at me with her wise, gentle eyes, and nodded. "Sometimes, my dear, we have to step off the pages and write our own chapters." Her words struck me deeply, resonating within my heart like a guiding light. The idea of taking control of our own narrative ignited a sense of purpose within Thomas and me. We began crafting a plan, one that involved not just us, but Clara as well. The three of us would work together to reclaim our lives from the shadows. We decided to throw a small gathering, inviting our closest friends from school and including Clara, of course, as an honored guest. "Let's show them who we really are," Thomas declared, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. It was a chance to connect with others, to reveal our true selves beyond the walls of our lavish home. As the day of the gathering approached, I felt a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. What if our friends didn't understand? What if they only saw the surface, the gilded halls, the opulent furniture, without seeing the real us? Nevertheless, with Clara's encouragement, I chose to believe in the possibility of acceptance. We spent the days leading up to the event decorating the expansive living room, transforming it into a vibrant space filled with colorful lights and homemade treats. It became a labor of love, a reflection of our shared dreams and the newfound bond we formed with Clara. When the evening finally arrived, the atmosphere buzzed with a nervous excitement. Guests arrived, their chatter filling the air, but I felt a hint of trepidation. I caught sight of Thomas across the room, his smile widening as he engaged in conversation with some friends. I took a deep breath, reminding myself of the purpose behind this gathering. Our guests deserve to know us, not just as the invisible twins of a wealthy family, but as individuals brimming with hopes and aspirations. As the night wore on, I stepped into conversations, sharing stories of our adventures, our challenges, and even the moments of joy we experienced in each other's company. It was during one of these conversations that I noticed my mother watching from a distance. Margaret seemed lost in thought, perhaps reflecting on her own struggles as she observed us navigating a world she often shielded us from. I felt a pang of concern for her, realizing how much pressure she carried while trying to maintain the facade of a perfect family. I wandered over to her, sensing an opportunity to connect. "Mom, we're really happy to have everyone here tonight. It feels good to share our story." Her eyes softened, and I could see the warmth of a smile beginning to form on her lips. "I've always wanted to hear your stories, Brielle," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. In that moment, I understood that she craved connection just as much as we did, lost in her own tumultuous sea of emotions. The night unfolded in surprising ways. Friends mingled, laughter echoed, and a sense of belonging washed over us like a warm tide. Clara, radiant and enthusiastic, embraced her role as an unofficial host, circulating among the guests and making everyone feel welcome. I watched her interact with Thomas, exchanging jokes and sharing in the joy of the moment. For the first time, I felt the walls of our home transform into a sanctuary, a place where our true selves could emerge, unrestricted by the expectations that often suffocated us. As the evening drew to a close, I caught my father's gaze from across the room. Daniel stood at the entrance, a silhouette of authority cloaked in the shadows. It struck me how distant he had become, a mere figure in our lives rather than the father I longed to connect with. I felt an urge to bridge that gap, to reach out and pull him into our world. However, as I opened my mouth to call him over, I hesitated. Would he even want to join us in this moment of vulnerability? With a heavy heart, I turned back to my friends and family, realizing that the journey we had begun was just the beginning. Clara's words echoed in my mind, urging me to step off the pages of the story we had been handed and to craft our own. It wouldn't be easy, but I finally felt the stirring of hope. We were not invisible anymore. We were here, and we mattered. With Clara's encouragement weighing heavily on my heart, I felt a surge of determination. I glanced at Thomas, who seemed to share my newfound resolve. His eyes shone with a flicker of excitement, an emotion I hadn't seen in a while. As we left the garden, I could sense a shift, not just within ourselves, but in the air around us. Perhaps it was time to confront the wall of silence that had built up between us and our father. We had spent too long in the shadows, suffocated by his success and our own longing for recognition. The image of our father, stern and unyielding, played over and over in my mind. I recalled the countless moments when I had tried to gain his attention, from the desperate displays of talent at family gatherings to the quiet whispers of my dreams that went unheard. I found my way to the family library, a cavernous room lined with books and filled with a lingering scent of leather and dust. Thomas joined me, leaning against the doorframe, his expression a mix of curiosity and caution. "What's the plan?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as if the very walls could hear us. I shrugged, feeling the weight of uncertainty. The idea of confronting our father made my heart race, but I knew we couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. We needed a plan. Something concrete to guide us through the tangled mess of our family dynamics. "Maybe we should just talk to Mom first," I suggested, feeling that she might be our best ally. Margaret had always been the one to listen, even when her attention was divided. I remembered the long conversations we had shared over cups of hot chocolate, where I poured out my heart and she reciprocated with her stories of when she was young. She understood the struggle of feeling unseen, and I sensed that she might have insights into how to reach Daniel. "Let's see if she can help us approach Dad," I added. Thomas nodded, seemingly pleased with my idea, and together we moved to find our mother. When we found her in the kitchen, Margaret was hunched over, her hands expertly kneading dough. Flour dusted her apron, and her brows were furrowed in concentration. For a moment, I hesitated to interrupt her, but the thought of being invisible again urged me forward. "Mom?" I called softly. Watching her head snap up, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. "Can we talk?" "Of course, sweetheart," she replied, wiping her hands on a towel before leaning against the counter, her interest piqued. "What's on your mind?" The warmth in her voice was a balm to my frayed nerves. I exchanged glances with Thomas, who seemed to be gathering courage alongside me. "It's about Dad," I started, my voice trembling slightly. "We feel like he doesn't see us, Mom, like we're just there." Margaret's expression shifted, a mixture of understanding and sadness clouding her eyes. "I know, dear," she sighed, her shoulders drooping. "Your father is so consumed by his work that he doesn't realize how much he's missing. I've tried to talk to him, but you know how he gets." Her honesty stung, but I appreciated her willingness to acknowledge our feelings. "Maybe we can help him understand," Thomas chimed in. "We were thinking of talking to him together, show him what he's missing." A flicker of hope ignited in my chest. Could we really change things? Margaret regarded us thoughtfully, her eyes scanning our faces as if trying to gauge our determination. "That might be a good idea, but it won't be easy. Your father can be stubborn when it comes to his work." "I think it's worth a try," I replied, my voice steadier now. We can't keep living like this." She smiled faintly, and in that moment, I felt a deep connection between us, an unspoken bond that seemed to promise support. As we talked about how to approach our father, I could feel the energy in the room shift. Clara's impact on our lives was already taking root, driving us to seek the connection we so desperately needed. It was as if the universe had conspired to give us a second chance, a moment to reclaim our voices. We finally settled on a plan. During dinner that evening, we would broach the subject. It was a simple setting, just the four of us, but it felt monumental as the sun began to set. Casting golden hues through the mansion's expansive windows, I couldn't shake the nervous flutter in my stomach. When dinner arrived, the table was elegantly set, an ostentatious display of our family's wealth that felt alien to me now. I glanced at Thomas and we shared a knowing look, both of us aware of the stakes. My father entered shortly thereafter, his suit crisp and his expression focused. The way he carried himself exuded authority, yet it felt intimidating, like standing before a towering fortress. "Evening," he greeted, settling into his seat without a glance toward us. My heart raced, but Thomas nudged me gently, encouraging me to take the lead. "Dad," I began, my voice steadying with each word, "we need to talk." The clinking of cutlery momentarily halted, and Daniel's attention snapped to me, surprise flickering across his face. "About what?" he asked, a touch of irritation lacing his voice as if my presence was an unwelcome disruption. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my brother's gaze beside me, a silent promise of support. "About us. About you not noticing us," I said, my voice gaining strength. The air felt charged, electric with unspoken words and held-back emotions. I could see the shift in my father's demeanor, a fleeting confusion crossing his features, as if I had just pricked a balloon of his certainty. For the first time in a long while, I felt visible. As I spoke, laying bare the feelings that had been bottled up for years, I realized that this moment was more than just a conversation. It was a chance for us to redefine our family. My heart raced as I continued, the words spilling out like water from a cracked dam. I could see Daniel's expression morphing from confusion to discomfort, and for a moment, I thought he might retreat into the safety of his business world. Yet there was a flicker of something else in his eyes, perhaps recognition or regret. "You think it's easy, don't you?" he finally said, his voice tight, as if he were grappling with the weight of my revelations. "That I don't care?" I shook my head, feeling the urgency of my emotions surge within me. "It's not about you caring, Dad. It's about us. We've lived here, surrounded by luxury, but in reality, we've felt so alone. We just want to be a part of your life." I glanced at Thomas, whose eyes were wide, reflecting my own determination. Margaret, who had been silently observing, stepped forward. "Daniel," she said softly, her voice trembling, "your children are reaching out to you. This isn't just about work, it's about being a family." Her words hung in the air, a fragile bridge built on shared hurt and unmet needs. The tension in the room was palpable, each of us suspended in a moment of fragile hope. I could see that Clara, who had been cleaning the nearby window, was now frozen in place, her hands resting on the sill. I had once thought she was just the maid, but in that instant, she seemed to embody a deeper understanding of our plight than anyone else in the room. "Do you know how hard I work?" Daniel shot back, his voice rising. "I provide for you all. This house, the clothes, the education, it's all for you." "But it's not enough," I burst out, the frustration of years spilling over. "You give us everything material, but you forget about us. We want your time, your attention. We want you to see us." His eyes narrowed, but the anger in them began to fade as he studied my face, perhaps for the first time. I could feel a shift in the atmosphere, a slow unspooling of the tight grip he maintained on his life and work. It was as if the facade he had built around himself was beginning to crack, revealing a man who had been lost in the chaos of his ambitions. Can you really understand what I go through every day? He challenged, but there was less bite in his tone. I want to understand, Dad, I replied, my voice softening. But you have to let us in first. We want to know you, just like you want us to know you're working hard for us. Thomas stepped forward, echoing my sentiment. We may be kids, but we're not blind. We see how hard you work, but we also see the distance between us. It hurts. For the first time, I saw a flicker of vulnerability in Daniel's eyes. He looked down, perhaps contemplating our words, and in that silence, I felt a sense of hope. Maybe we could bridge this gap after all. Clara cleared her throat softly, drawing our attention. I know it's not easy, sir, she said, stepping cautiously into the emotional fray. But sometimes being present means more than providing. The little things, a shared meal, a conversation over breakfast, a simple hello when you walk through the door, those moments build connections. They remind us that we're all in this together. Her voice was gentle, yet it carried a weight of truth that resonated with all of us. I realized how often I had overlooked her presence in our lives. Preserve the original language that held our household together, her warmth and kindness a balm to our wounds. Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. I suppose I've lost sight of what really matters, he admitted, his voice now almost a whisper. I thought providing for you was enough. It's not just about the things, I said, my heart swelling with an unexpected surge of compassion for him. It's about us being a family. It's about love and connection. Margaret stepped closer to him, reaching out as if to bridge the gap that had formed over the years. We can work on this together. We've all been struggling, but if we're honest, if we communicate, we can heal. Daniel looked at her, and for a moment, I thought I saw the father I had longed for behind the layers of ambition and distraction. I want to try, he said slowly, meeting my gaze as well. I've been caught up in my own world, but I'm willing to change. I want to know you two. The corners of Thomas's lips turned up in a tentative smile, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Perhaps this was the turning point we needed, the moment where shadows began to lift, revealing the possibility of a brighter future. As we stood together in the living room, the weight of years of neglect slowly lifted. I could see Clara out of the corner of my eye, her expression softening as she silently celebrated this first step toward healing. Can we all try to have dinner together tomorrow? I asked, a simple request that felt monumental. No distractions, just us. Daniel hesitated, but then nodded slowly. Yes, that sounds good. I felt a warmth spread through my chest, a flicker of hope igniting. It was the beginning of something new, a chance to rewrite our family story. We might be fragile, but we were taking the first steps toward healing. As I looked at my brother, I knew we were not alone anymore. The bonds of family had a chance to be reforged. If anyone else has a story about finding connection in unexpected places, please share it. Everyone deserves to be seen and to feel loved. The air in the mansion felt charged with possibility as Thomas and I made our way to the sunroom, the place Clara had suggested we meet. I could hear the soft rustle of the curtains swaying in the breeze, a gentle reminder of the world outside, a world that seemed to beckon us with its warmth. My heart raced with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. I was both eager and terrified about what lay ahead. Clara was already there, sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by a rainbow of art supplies. She had transformed the sunroom into a little haven, a place bursting with color and creativity. It felt like stepping into another realm, one that was filled with laughter and the possibility of healing. Clara's gentle smile as she saw us approach made me feel that we were welcome here. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe. "Come on in, you two. I've been waiting for you," Clara said with a sparkle in her eyes that reminded me of the stars we would gaze at in the backyard. "Today, we're going to paint our dreams. You can paint whatever you wish." As I settled down beside Thomas, I couldn't help but wonder what dreams I had left. So much of my life had been spent trying to be invisible, avoiding the harsh realities of our family dynamics. But Clara's enthusiasm was infectious, and soon enough, I was dipping my brush into the vibrant colors, letting the paint flow freely on the canvas. Thomas chose a deep blue, representing the sky and endless possibilities, while I picked a mix of greens and yellows, creating a landscape that felt alive and hopeful. As we painted, I stole glances at my brother. His focus was intense, and I could tell he was lost in his thoughts, dreaming his own dreams. I wished I could hear what was going on in his mind.
What hopes he held for our family and for ourselves. The walls that had once seemed so towering around us began to feel less constricting, as if they were starting to dissolve with every stroke of the brush. Clara joined in, laughing as she splattered some paint on her apron, her easygoing demeanor making the atmosphere lighter. "Do you know what I see in your paintings?" Clara asked, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "I see potential, stories waiting to be told. Your dreams are powerful, and they deserve to be recognized." Her words hung in the air, and I felt a warmth spread through me, the kind of warmth that comes from being seen for who you truly are. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just painting, I was expressing everything I had kept locked away in my heart. The hours slipped by like sand through an hourglass, and when we finally laid down our brushes, my canvas was filled with sunlit meadows, blooming flowers, and a winding path that seemed to invite anyone who looked at it to take the journey with me. I felt a sense of accomplishment wash over me, a feeling I had been craving for so long. I turned to Thomas, eager to see what he had created. His painting was a swirling depiction of a great ocean, crashing waves filled with shades of blue and green, and in the distance, I could see a lighthouse standing tall, guiding lost ships home. I understood then that this was his dream, to navigate through our chaotic family life and find a safe harbor for both of us. Our eyes met, and in that moment, we didn't need words. We had shared our truths in colors and lines, and I felt a connection to him deeper than I had ever experienced. "Clara, this was amazing!" I exclaimed, unable to hide my excitement. "Thank you for bringing us here and helping us find our voices." Clara beamed, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "You two have always had the voices inside you. You just needed a space to let them out." As we cleaned up the mess we had made, I felt lighter somehow, as if the weight of my invisible existence was beginning to lift. My mother had been preoccupied, my father oblivious, but here we were, creating our own narrative, shaping our reality with every brushstroke. This newfound sense of agency sent a thrill through me. I wanted to explore more. Just then, the door swung open, and my mother stepped in, her hair slightly disheveled and her face flushed. She looked taken aback, her gaze darting from the vibrant paintings to us. "What is this?" she asked, her voice a mixture of surprise and curiosity. "Mom, look what we made!" Thomas exclaimed, his excitement bubbling over. Margaret stepped closer, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw her fully present, her eyes lighting up with wonder. "These are beautiful. I had no idea you both were so talented," she said, kneeling beside us to examine each piece more closely. In that moment, I realized how desperately I wanted to share my heart with her, to tell her everything I had been feeling. "Mom, we want to create more together. Can we do this as a family?" Her expression softened, and for a fleeting second, it felt like the three of us were connected, weaving together the threads of our shared experience. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, contemplating the possibilities of being present with us, of nurturing our talents instead of just surviving amidst the chaos. "I would love that," she replied softly, glancing at Thomas and then back at me. "Let's make a plan for our art days." As we began to discuss our ideas, Clara quietly observed, her presence a gentle reminder that she had played a part in this awakening.
I sensed that our story was shifting, that we were finally taking steps toward mending the fractures in our family. With each passing moment, I felt the bond strengthening, and for the first time, I could truly see a future where we were not just shadows, but vibrant colors in our own masterpiece.